This morning we're going to talk about quick change. We could spend a lot of time talking about quick change. Things change very quickly in our world. I'll throw in some references a little bit as we some passages that might have some applicability. Although I apologize, I do not have them made up into slides just because the speed that everything is happening at, it's very difficult to prepare. I see here I have 180 slides, which I know I'm not going to get through. And I would say that every 5 slides, I could break them down into groups of 5 and do a presentation on each one that would easily be over an hour long. Now, I know you would find it hard to believe that I could talk that long, but I think I could stretch it out a little bit to get it to that point. I'm stunned as I, each week, at the speed with which things are happening, that current events that tie into Bible prophecy. That's what we call it, a prophecy update. It's not that the prophecies have changed, but the facts on the ground change quite a bit. And that's why one of the things I encourage is that people not be too dogmatic about exactly how things are going to occur. And I'll explain that in a little bit if I remember to do it, because I don't have a slide on it. But just a few things. Everything is converging. Everything is happening very quickly. Things are changing quickly. We have a president at war with different people in the media. We have people in the media at war with the president. We have countries at war. We have things that are changing. Israel is under some rather severe distress on its northern border. Talk a little bit about that. I thought I would start off, though, with somebody posted this on my timeline. I thought it was good, is how people in our world read the Bible today. And so they take Matthew chapter 7 and they turn it into judge not. And that's not what it says. It just says if you're going to judge, you're going to get judged by the same standard that you judge other people by. And we're told throughout Scripture that we need to discern, we need to be careful, we need to watch out. And you can only do that by judging. And I always like to say to the people who say, you're not supposed to judge, well, aren't you judging me by saying that? I mean, that's the obvious comeback. So let's just talk about a few things to show how precarious the world situation is. Now, we live in Columbus, Ohio, and Columbus, Ohio has a very good economy. It has a very good, depending on which side of the market you're on, it has a good real estate market. I know in our neighborhood and other places, people put their house on the market and they sell the next day at or above listing, which is great if you're selling your house. It's not so great if you're buying. There are new apartments going up all over the place. I just saw some bunch of them over by Polaris, these 4-story apartment buildings, and they're just growing up like crazy. But then I hear people are having trouble finding a place to rent because our economy is good. But you go to other places and things aren't going as well. You go over to Dayton, and the economy, I don't think, is good over there. And they're also, Dayton now has the distinction of being sort of the opioid overdose capital of America. They've had about 380 overdose deaths in the first half of the year, which is more than they had all of last year, and they think they could hit 800. I saw up in Mansfield, just an hour north of here, that they had 11 overdoses a week ago Thursday in one day. And this is an enormous problem in our culture, and it's really hitting Ohio very, very hard, and it's devastating. I mean, people are dying, people are getting addicted, and it's really taxing the ability of people to respond. I don't remember the town where I read about, but their overdose problem is so great that they're essentially limiting people to 3 instances of getting Narcan because they're running low on the supply of Narcan to overcome an overdose. So you get 3 shots, and the next one you're on your own, I guess. 3 shots, I don't know if that's the right thing to use in terms of an overdose, but it's very distressing to watch because certain aspects of our culture and economy seem great, others seem not so good. I saw a car ad this week. I think I saw it on Zero Hedge. It's a blog that I look at every now and then. I don't recommend that you look at it if you're prone to depression or anxiety or anything like that. But they had everybody, car dealers are struggling to sell cars. And in some places, they are even advertising that you get an extra discount if you have a low credit score. So mess up your credit and then you can go buy a new car. Which doesn't, it seems a little bit counterintuitive that that's the way things are working, but that's the way things are working. One place where things are not working, Chicago, well, first I'll talk about Seattle. You see the headline, Seattle aims at McDonald's and hits workers. What's happened? Now, the people in Seattle will never admit this. They wanted to raise the minimum wage, so they raised the minimum wage. And what happened? Did it hurt McDonald's? No. You know what McDonald's is doing? McDonald's is going out and putting automated ordering machines in all of its restaurants all over the country. And what will that do? It'll replace workers. So fewer people will be employed, but you go to the people in Seattle and they say, well, but we feel good about what we did because we're getting people more money. But you're getting less people more money, and you're not even getting them more money because why? Their hours are getting cut. Chicago wanted to, once great city, has been in the control of leftists and Democrats for generations now, and they wanted to, I think this has been put on hold, they were going to put a soda tax on drinks by the ounce because they don't think people should drink soda. Okay, I guess that's they don't want people to drink soda in Chicago. But just imagine what would happen if they tried to cut off the beer, tax it by the ounce in Chicago. They would probably have riots. And in fact, Illinois is in major financial distress. A couple states are. New Jersey just has closed down government except for essential services because of a budget crisis. They've not had a budget for 3 years now, 700 and some days in Illinois. They have $14 to $16 billion in unpaid bills by the state. 9,000 dentists are owed money by the state of Illinois. They can't pay their bills. Schools aren't getting things paid. They're going to shut down, I believe, as of yesterday, shutting down every highway improvement or close to every highway improvement job in the state of Illinois because they don't have any money to pay people with. To give you an idea, $14 billion in unpaid bills. They have $250 billion in unfunded public pensions. So whatever they have in unpaid bills, multiply it by almost 20, and you have the amount of unpaid, unfunded public pensions. What they need to have to do this. And I read that there are the average teacher retires at 59. There are somewhere around 7,000 teachers that are retired that get over $100,000 a year in pension. And that will soon be over 20,000 within the next year or so. And at 7,000, it takes every amount of tax paid by somebody in Illinois, it takes 330,000 people to support those 7,000. There's 6 million workers in Illinois. So do the math, which they obviously have not. So the average teacher will, over their career, they'll retire at 59, and they'll pay in about $190,000 in contributions towards their retirement. Over the course of their retirement, the average teacher will get $2.2 million in pension payments. Is there anybody on the planet that thinks that that is sustainable? Outside of a crazy leftist that's actually running this place over there. It's insanity. Okay, Mark Zuckerberg at Facebook, he says, well, he wants Facebook to be like a church because churches are declining. And here's what he said to Facebook people this week. Now, he's talking about, well, you'll hear what he's talking about, and keep in mind that his fortune now is worth somewhere around $65 billion.
We've helped more than 50% more people join meaningful communities on Facebook than had joined them in the whole history of the product before that. Now, we're going to set a goal. We want to help 1 billion people join meaningful communities. And if we can do this, it will not only reverse the whole decline in community membership that we've seen for decades around the world, it's going to start to strengthen our overall social fabric and bring the world closer together. But AI is only going to get us so far, right? Because in order to have meaningful communities to suggest, there have to be strong communities in the first place. So that's where all of you, the community leaders, that's why you are so important to this mission. Right, as I've traveled around and seen a lot of different places, one theme has really stuck with me. Every great community has great leaders. So think about this. A church doesn't just come together by itself, right? It has a pastor who looks out for the well-being of the congregation, and if someone hits hard times, they're in charge of making sure that people have the food and shelter they need.
And so he's essentially comparing Facebook to it. We're going to replace the church. And there's elsewhere where he implies the church has declined over time. And that has caused a lack of community in a lot of places. People used to belong to a church. They don't now. So now we're essentially going to replace the church, and we're going to make the world better. A very modest goal. Somebody suggested, look, Mark, if you're so serious about providing for people's needs, pick a couple of counties. Take your money and go provide for all of their needs and track them for 5 years and see how everything works out for you. Because you got the money. So put your money where your mouth is. But you know that he won't do that. Some things here. Germany has backed same-sex marriage. They had a vote in their parliament. By the way, Angela Merkel voted against it. Because she thought that, it should be, she's stuck on traditional marriage. So there will be snippets of good news this week in this update. Because there are some things that are happening that are, wow, I like that. That's what I say when I see it. So I like that she did that. But she's ruining the country, but, at least she's for traditional marriage, it appears. What she did was she released her party to vote their conscience, and that's why it passed. So she supports, she gets the benefit of saying, I support traditional marriage, but I let everybody vote their conscience, which means we got same-sex marriage anyway. Now, this was a little controversial. This is Medusa Magazine. It is a feminist revolution now. That's what their subtitle. It's a magazine. And one of the articles that was on there, now it's controversial, but the title of it was published a week ago, Beyond Pro-Choice, the Solution to White Supremacy is White Abortion. Now, there's some controversy as to whether this is satire or whether this is real. If it's satire, it's up there with some of the stuff that the Babylon Bee does. I don't know if you've ever seen the Babylon Bee. They put sort of satire articles up about, worship leaders and pastors doing such and such. And every now and then it's really good satire when you have trouble figuring out whether it's satire or not. And so I don't think this is satire. I'm going to read you some quotes from this article. Now, this is a feminist. We got to stand up for the oppressed, people of color. So they're leftist revolutionaries. They want to tear down the structures in America. But listen to what this article says. White women, it is time to do your part. Your white children reinforce the white supremacist society that benefits you. If you claim to be a progressive and yet willingly birth white children by your own choice, you are a hypocrite. White women should be encouraged to abort their white children and to use their freed up time and resources to assist women of color who have no other choice but to raise their children. So here's my suggestion. Go talk to Mark Zuckerberg and get some money from him, because he's got plenty to spread around. Facebook is important to a lot of people. It is a way to build community. It is a way, I think, that Christians are connecting with each other. But there's this tension with Facebook about, if I put something up, am I going to get banned? I'm going to get blocked. Am I going to get put in timeout? And, I've been in timeout for like 72 hours on Facebook. I don't remember what it was, but, and I have it happen to friends of mine, and some people have it happen all the time, because they look for words. And here's an interesting thing. Now, this involves Twitter and Live Action. Live Action is the organization that opposes abortion, that's run by Lila Rose. I'm sure you've heard of her. Good conservative. She did an interview on Tucker Carlson about this. So Live Action posts about things about abortion. And they always, a lot of times, they will tweak Planned Parenthood. And they will show the hypocrisy of Planned Parenthood, where Planned Parenthood would say something like, well, we're all about women's services. But then there are people, investigative journalists, that go out and they call 50 Planned Parenthoods about getting a mammogram, and we don't offer a mammogram. Yet Cecile Richards, who had a pretty derogatory comment at the Aspen Institute this week about pro-life. Oh, I'm pro-life. Those people over there are not pro-life. She'll go to Congress and say, well, we need funding because we provide healthcare services for women. But when you press them for real facts, there are very few facts to back that up. They do a little bit in some places, but it might be a couple, 3, 5 of their clinics around the country that actually do this. The rest are just abortion mills. So Lila Rose posts this on her Twitter feed. Women don't need Planned Parenthood. There's over 13,000 comprehensive health clinics across the country that women can go to and get free health care. So Cecile Richards, she'll go and say, well, we're the only one doing this, which is just a big fat lie. So Live Action went to Twitter and said, we want to do like Planned Parenthood does. We want to buy ads on Twitter. We have money to do it. We want to pay the money. How do we do that? Twitter responded back and said, you don't qualify because of your message. It's insensitive. What they did was they actually posted a picture. What they did was they went through their Twitter feed, and they found that Lila Rose had posted pictures of a baby in the womb, or a mother who's pregnant talking about her child that's coming. And that was considered by the Twitter Gestapo to be insensitive to other people's feelings. So you can't sell ads. And so they've been pursuing this for a couple months now. And they said, well, what do we have to do? And they said, you have to take down everything like that off of your Twitter feed, delete it. And if we think you've done enough deleting of things that we don't like, then maybe we'll let you sell ads, but you'll have to completely rework your website and everything. Now, what does Twitter market itself as? A place where you can speak your mind in 140 characters, as long as you agree with us. And this is the problem that I see coming with these people. I don't even have a slide on this. Germany went out and raided, I'm going to get the number wrong. It was at least hundreds of homes, seizing computers and things where people had posted things that were considered to the German police to be offensive. Hundreds of homes were raided across Germany at the same time. We know this is coming, so I know there are some things that are going on. There is some good news in this update, so just be patient. This is troubling, this baby in England. And listen, I just want to say something. I saw a lot of discussion about this on Facebook. If you think that this does not show the dangers of single-payer socialized medicine, you are ignorant of the true facts. And you need to open your eyes. This couple, they have a baby, has a genetic disease, and the child's probably going to die. There's an experimental treatment. A doctor in America said that they would provide that for free. England said, you're not allowed to take your baby out of the hospital and take it to America, essentially sentencing the kid to death. It's cruel beyond belief what's happening to this parent. So you can play for them Connie Yates and Chris Gard with their son Charlie Gard. That something will intervene there. The Catholic Church came out with what I would consider to be a rather weak statement about it. You can look that up online. This is good news. There's a bunch of congressmen who have written a letter to Ruth Bader Ginsburg saying, you're so opposed to Donald Trump, you need to recuse yourself from everything coming up that involves the Trump administration. Now, I doubt that Ruth Bader Ginsburg will read it. I'm not sure she's able to. As long as her, whatever they keep, that cryogenic chamber they keep her in over the summer is operating, she might be able to read it. So, but there were some good decisions this week from the Supreme Court. Church was entitled to be treated like every other organization to get public money. Now, this is good and bad, I guess. I mean, my concern would be that if you take the money, they're going to put strings on it. They're going to make it so bad that you don't want the money. But this has been in litigation. It was a Lutheran school. They wanted to add a recreation facility or something, I think is the fact. And they were barred by law. What was it, a playground? They still let people build playgrounds? They don't know how dangerous a playground is? What is it? Oh, surface of the playground. What, like foam rubber? Like one of those memory foam mattresses? We didn't have that when we were kids. I mean, how many of you fell off monkey bars and how many of you are still okay and walking around? Yeah, we used to. I mean, when we had played baseball in the backyard. There were 3 boys next door, my brother and I, and we'd play baseball. The left field foul pole was the corner of the garage. And I was running after fly ball, and I hit the garage a couple times, So there's no padding on it. And second base was the concrete corner of the septic tank. Okay, so you had to be real careful sliding into second. And then home plate was a cinder block. And you never slid into home. And you just kind of went by and, did this. So, but things have changed. So anyway, good news, fairly good decision. They're going to hear this cake case where the guy refused to bake a cake for a gay wedding. And I have a problem with the concept that they're forcing artists and other people to do creative things or things they don't want to support. And they can go find it. You know, you need a photographer, you know, get your kid's got an iPhone, let them use that. Pretty good camera on that. So this is a good, they're going to hear this. And given the decision, I think that there's a good chance that this guy might actually get some relief. They sort of backed off the travel ban a little bit. And so the travel ban is going into effect. And everybody's on the left is just going crazy. Here's Sally Yates. She was the acting attorney general. She was supposed to go into court as part of her job and defend this. This was her at the Aspen Institute this week, talking about her conflict over whether she could do that.
Thought about it more and talked with a few people and came ultimately to the conclusion that our defending this travel ban would require me to send lawyers of the Department of Justice into court to say that this ban had nothing to do with religion. It was all based on national security, nothing to do with religion. And I did not believe that to be a defense that was grounded in truth. And I couldn't send Department of Justice lawyers in to defend something based on a defense that I did not believe was grounded in truth.
And she wouldn't resign. She needed to be fired. Why? So she could be a martyr of the left and get her career in advance. Great article this week, couple in the Wall Street Journal, Divided America Stands Then and Now. This historian that they interviewed for this article says that the nation is more bitterly split than ever with the exception of the Civil War era. And I think that's correct. Now, there will be a lot of people say, oh, no, it's not that bad. It really is that bad. I mean, we see results of this. Another good editorial by Bill McGurn about Anthony Kennedy, culture warrior. There were things that were taken away from the political process starting with Roe versus Wade. And I think it has contributed to the bitterness, the divisiveness in our politics today because we've never had to, essentially, what Anthony Kennedy did said, hey, I went to Stanford and Harvard, and I'm smarter than all of you, and I know best how to do this, and we're just going to take this off the table. McGurn in his article says this, on issues best fitted for federalist solutions such as abortion and marriage, Justice Kennedy has proved himself a reliable voice for the animating impulse of modern American progressivism. This is the idea that the American people cannot be trusted to decide certain issues, and so must yield, as he once put it, to the enhanced understanding of unelected judges as himself. And a great dissent, and I think the Casey Planned Parenthood case, which sort of reaffirmed Roe, it said, well, Roe's not very good, but we're gonna follow it anyway. Anton Scalia said this, by foreclosing all democratic outlet for the deep passions this issue arouses, by banishing the issue from the political forum, it gives all participants, even the losers, the satisfaction of a fair hearing and an honest fight, by continuing the imposition of a rigid national rule instead of allowing for regional differences, the court merely prolongs and intensifies the anguish. McGurn says this, having reaffirmed a constitutional right to privacy that James Madden and the other founders had somehow neglected to include in their draft, the court, with Justice Kennedy's assistance, would soon unearth another constitutional right unmentioned in the Constitution, dignity. And that formed the basis of the Obergefell same-sex marriage decision. And he concludes with this, not so in the America Justice Kennedy has ushered in. Now we jail county clerks who don't want their names on such certificates and ruin people who don't want their businesses to participate in same-sex weddings. Indeed, the court has just agreed to hear an appeal from a baker who declined to make a cake for a gay couple in Colorado, and Justice Kennedy, in all likelihood, will once again be the deciding vote. This is an interesting one of these memes that somebody put up. This progressive up here says, for gender equality, I will call God she. To which somebody says, did you just reject God's preferred gender pronoun? See, it never works that way, does it? Great article in Politico about how Portland, liberal Portland, has become America's most violent city. One of the comments in there, the norms of protest and counter-protest, mostly verbal shouting and sign waving, are quickly crumbling in Portland. The left-wing Antifa have even, anti-fascist is what that stands for, have even threatened preemptive violence in the name of defending the city from groups they say promote violence. And you go to their Rose City Antifa Facebook page, and you see what it says here, Rose City Antifa, and below it says, set phasers to kill. These are the progressive left. So when they complain about the right being violent and fascist and that type of thing, what are they doing? They're projecting. Okay, always remember, leftists project. This is what was this too? Enough. Stop Patriot Prayer now. They're going to have a prayer service by some Patriot groups. And so that needs to be stopped at all costs. Sarah Palin is suing the New York Times. I'm not sure she has a great case. She's got a good lawyer, so he can take any case that he wants. It's hard for public officials to sue unless you can prove malice, but they may have a case here because you remember back when Gabby Giffords got shot. The New York Times came out with an editorial. Paul Krugman did it. The New York Times editorial staff did it. That it was Sarah Palin's fault because she had put like a target on certain districts, that they were going to target those districts to get a Republican elected instead of a Democrat. And so this guy must have seen the target, and he must be a conservative or a right-wing extremist, and he saw the target, so he assumed that he could go shoot Gabby Giffords. And it all turned out to be a lie. The guy wasn't right-wing. There's no evidence that he ever saw this ad or fundraising thing that Sarah Palin and the Republicans did. Well, then when the shooting occurred recently of the congressman, the New York Times came out, and back in 2011, the New York Times said, well, we got it wrong. We made a mistake. We apologize. We are issuing a correction. But then when the congressman got shot a couple of weeks ago, they came out with an editorial saying, this is sort of like Sarah Palin causing Gabby Giffords to be shot. And they've issued another correction. She might have a case because their hatred comes through. This is one of those slides where, boy, I could talk for a long time about that. By the way, we have a conference here on the last Saturday in August. Mike Clapham and I will be talking, and Patrick Wood will be here. Patrick Wood talks a lot about technocracy. So this is kind of right up his alley, and I don't know if he'll include it. I'll probably include it in the talk. I'm trying to get prepared for that. By the way, I'll also be speaking in Denver the first weekend in August, denverprophecysummit.com, and it's free. You can sign up, watch online, or come see us in the Mile High City. And by the way, I want to make a statement. Just because I speak at a conference with somebody or somebody comes here does not necessarily mean we agree with everything that they say. Okay? There's certain basics we need to have agreement on, but there are certain things that we're going to disagree on until the Lord returns and straightens us all out. I don't know if I mentioned this. I saw at one conference somebody had a statement, and it was a Bible prophecy conference, and he said that after much study and thought, he had determined why in Revelation it says there are 30 minutes of silence in heaven. Remember that verse that says that? And the reason is so all the prophecy teachers can update their charts to what's really happening. So I thought it was kind of funny. But this is a crack in creation, and this is Tower of Babel type stuff. This is bizarre. Jennifer Duda and Samuel Sternberg gene editing and the unthinkable power to control evolution. And this lady's been, Jennifer Doudna she's a scientist. She's involved in this CRISPR technology where they can edit genes, turn things on and off, change people's DNA. And she's interviewed. She comes across as this kind of grandmotherly type. But I think what they're talking about is just absolutely frightening. Here's a little bit of her at the Aspen Institute. And if you want to watch, there's dozens of hours of stuff if you want to see what the progressives are thinking about at the Aspen Institute. It's a progressive thing that takes place in Aspen. They go and talk to each other, and they pat each other on the back, and they make each other think that they're really smarter than everybody else. You know, just we're like the Anthony Kennedys of the world. We're smarter than everybody else. But this is just a little snippet of an interview, much hour-long interview with her, and listen to her, the questions and everything here.
And so can we draw not a sharp line, but try to put a line in the sand between fixing things that are diseases, very harmful to people, versus creating enhancements, like making children taller, muscles, smarter, blonder. People say, okay, I want to change race. I want my children to be a different race. That's not a disease. That's something. Can we draw a line between that type of thing and saying, I've got a genetic disorder that's going to destroy my blood, or is there no line to be drawn?
I think it's hard, and the reason is this. Like, let's say that I told you we can make a change to an embryo that will remove a single gene that, if left in place, will make a person susceptible to cardiovascular disease when they get older. And there's no deleterious effect of removing this gene, so you know, it's a good idea to do it.
And
Would you call that
you could do a bad
enhancement?
cholesterol already, right? I mean, you could do CRISPR to take out,
Exactly.
not Mike, but somebody's bad cholesterol.
That's
The whole germline.
That's the idea.
And that's right, as you're saying, that's right on the borderline of a
Would you
disease
call it
enhancement.
enhancement, or would you call it preventing disease?
And this is the problem with the lack of ethics and ability to recognize it. And she's one of the two people at the top of this whole technology. And I find it a little bit frightening. Last week in the New York Times, they had a real threat of artificial intelligence. And they said, well, we're going to do artificial intelligence and people are going to lose their jobs. So we're going to, but the smart people are going to make more money than they are now. So now we have more income inequality. So how do we fix that? That's the biggest threat. This is a slide, the morning download. This is on the CIO Journal aspect of the Wall Street Journal. Artificial intelligence plays growing role in policing and enforcing social norms. And remember the show Person of Interest? And they had all those little squares with people and predictive. This is from a Chinese website about what they're doing with their technology. Now, somebody sent me an article about China and some of the things it's doing, and that's why I spent 2 hours down a rabbit trail checking out China. China incurred more debt between 2000 and 2014 than the combined GDP, $26 trillion, which is more than the combined gross domestic product of Germany, Japan, and the United States combined. They have debt bubbles that have never been seen in human history in China. They have infrastructure projects that are going. In Beijing, there's 3 cities, and I can't remember the name of it. They are building a city. They're working on their 7th or 8th highway ring. They're doing high-speed trains. This city, when it's done, will have 130 million people. That's about 8% of China's population will be in this city. Beijing and the 2 cities to the south. They're redoing water flows out of the Himalayas to provide water for these people. They will open later this year the largest airport on the planet. It'll serve, I think Atlanta right now is the biggest. It does about 96, 98 million passengers a year. If you've ever been to Atlanta, you believe that. This one will do 130 million. It replaces an airport that was just built and opened in 2008. That's how fast and they're going to keep both airports. So this technology thing is very strange. Just let me share a quick story with you. When Pam and I were in Israel, Google Maps was a very good assistant to have when we were driving, the day we drove up into the Golan. Because the maps are, most street signs are in Hebrew, Arabic, and then English, but not always, and sometimes the English is hard to read. And so it's great to have this device in your phone that'll just tell you where to go and turn by turn. But I noticed one thing was that we were up in the Golan, and it's a pretty sparsely populated area. It's farming, vineyards, a few little villages here and there. And so we were at a place where we were about a mile from an intersection. A road came out from the right. And we had the right of way, and we're doing about 55, 60, 65, okay, 75. No, we're driving, we're driving along at a pretty good clip, and there's a couple cars ahead of us. And I was watching the Google Maps, and if you know Google Maps, when there's a slowdown, it appears orange, yellow, then red, then dark red. And all of a sudden, the intersection changed from clear to orange. But nobody was putting on their brakes. And there was a car coming from the right. And I think what has happened is Google is taking the feed of information from my car, those cars, and actually engaging in kind of a predictive thing, because when I got to that place, it did slow down. But there was no reason, but it was like, I don't know if the people were letting up on the gas and slowing down, and Google was, and I'm just telling you is, I noticed this a lot in Israel, that it was sort of telling me in advance when there was going to be a slowdown, but I'm looking ahead and all I see is cars going the speed limit or above. And they're taking all of this information that's being fed to them, and they're running it through these computers and everything, and they're giving us predictive analysis. And so now they're taking it to another level with social norms, and I do find it rather concerning and even frightening in many respects. I wish Google would tell me when I'm going to, hit a bad tee shot or something, and then that would be something practical that I could use. And so we have this ransomware attacks and cyber attacks. There were a number of those this week. In England, they've now up to about 115 high rises after that bad fire at that tower. Every one of them has failed completely the fire safety test. So people are leaving these buildings, and now there's a housing crunch in England. There was good news in that they finally got ISIS pretty much either surrounded or out of Mosul. They will survive. This was one headline that said they're unlikely to survive. They will. They'll just morph into another, more underground, harder to find organization. Here's a little video of, this is what happened. This was a few years ago. This is al-Baghdadi, the imam that's in charge of ISIS, and he's announcing the new caliphate. Now, this took place in an old mosque in Mosul that, as they left town, ISIS blew up this week. You can see that it had a leaning, sort of the leaning tower of Pisa. It had a leaning minaret that was famous. And they just blew it up on the way out of town. and there's no sound on this, by the way, the cost of taking Mosul, though, about almost 1 million people have had to leave their homes. And when you look at this drone picture of the city's just destroyed. This is an incredibly densely populated city. That's the Tigris River there that you see. They hope that ISIS doesn't blow up one of the last bridges that remains across the Tigris. They're blowing things up. They booby-trap buildings. You remember the pictures we've shown you of Damascus? This is what Mosul looks like in many respects. Over 8,000 people in Mosul, civilians, have been killed. Now, what's happening is the government of Iraq, which is essentially Sunni, is fighting with the Shiite militias, which have fought and defeated Mosul, over who gets to go fight next. And there's been a pretty dramatic decline in the territory controlled by ISIS. This is what it looked like in 2015. The purple area would be ISIS, and this is what it looks like today. And they're at risk of losing that. So some good news there, but still very troubling. It's like, what do we do with it? Now we have more people displaced that might become refugees someplace. And the infrastructure in Syria and Iraq's still in a bad shape. And so this is really leading to more Iranian influence in a lot of these areas, which is not good because you don't want Iran to have a clear path all the way to the Mediterranean, but that seems to be more and more the case. So now I'm going to turn to, and one of the things I like to do a little bit is maybe talk about things that you don't notice that I think fit into the prophetic scenario. And there's a new leader in India. And how do you say his name, Supriya? Modi? Modi? Okay. Prime Minister Modi. He was here in Washington this week meeting with Donald Trump. This is an article in the Wall Street yesterday. Listen to this. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has come a long way. After being virtually banned from the U.S. for years over his failure to control anti-Muslim riots in his home state of Gujarat in 2002, he came to Washington for a triumphant first visit with President Donald Trump, complete with bear hugs, defense deals, and a welcoming tweet from the First Lady. He's Hindu. The Hindu nationalist arrival in Washington was a reminder that of all the recent revolutions at the ballot box, Mr. Modi's was the first, second most populous country on the planet. India has experienced something quite different in the 3 years since Mr. Modi took power. The other side, liberal India, secular India, the India of Nehru and Gandhi, hasn't merely been decimated electorally. It has ceased to exist as a cultural and moral force. And this is a huge change in, as I said, the second most populous country on the planet. In area after area of life, from politics to media to cinema, there is now Mr. Modi's India, and then a great void. The India of my childhood, which, with its fond notions of Hindu-Muslim unity, has gone under. It is complete and comprehensive a defeat as one can imagine. The most obvious consequence of India's new anti-Muslim atmosphere has been a spate of gruesome cow and beef-related murders. The cow is sacred to Hindus, but the current hysteria has been engineered. During his 2014 campaign, Mr. Modi whipped crowds into frenzies over a supposed conspiracy by his political foes to slaughter cows and export beef. Since he took power, India has seen more than 60 incidents of cow-related mob violence in which the overwhelming... Have you been reading about this? And you read about, a very developed rape culture in India as well, in which the overwhelming bulk of the 23 reported fatalities were Muslim. Mr. Modi has had very little to say about these deaths. On Wednesday, anti-lynching protests erupted in cities nationwide, and Mr. Modi finally bluntly condemned the violence. We belong to a land of nonviolence, invoking Gandhi. Now look, there's always been this very strong tension between Hindus and Muslims in India. I believe India is the country that has, not only is it the second largest country on the planet, it has the second largest number of Muslims in a single country on the planet behind Indonesia. 250 million or more Muslims. And there's a lot of tension for good reason. Muslims slaughtered in some of the wars back in the, between 1000 and 1500, year 1000, 1500, they slaughtered somewhere in the range, low side estimates, 85 million Hindus were killed by the Muslims. Upper range estimates I've seen are over 200 million. So and what you learn when you go over to the Middle East and other areas there in the East is cultures have very, very long memories, very long. And so that tension that's been simmering for hundreds of years, for centuries in India, is now coming to the forefront. Now, I say this because this week, Modi is here, and he has his problems, but the UN has its highlight. It happened a week or so ago, June 21st, International Day of Yoga. You missed it, didn't you? But look at the promo for this.
अंतर्राष्ट्रीय योग दिवस पर विश्व भर के योग प्रेमियों को अनेक अनेक शुभकामनाएं।
Today, we are linking yoga to health and well-being of all the people and the planet. Yoga, at its core, is a holistic and integral science of life. It deals with physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health in both individual, but also in the society. And it makes it worthy practice for people of all religions, races, and nationalities. As the international community works towards achieving SDG goal, we are all lined up to see how yoga can play a role at individual but also at a collective level and promote harmony between health, societies, environment in a sustainable but also in an inclusive manner.
You see what's happening? This is why we've been pretty negative and hard on Christians who've gotten off into mysticism. Because this mysticism is promoted as, I think it's part of this end time religion that we see forming, that people will get off into this mysticism and they won't be concerned about the truth. Now, so there's an article on Modi, and then you turn over a few pages, and here's an article on a guy named Bob Roth. He's the head of a nonprofit, and he's out there spending millions and millions of dollars promoting transcendental meditation, the same another type of mysticism. And he says, in this article, and you see how the lady said they want to do churches, transcendental meditation want to do churches. And in large part, the evangelical church is totally defenseless against this. Remember the article at the beginning, the first slide I used, judge not? You could do the same kind of thing for Psalm 46, the verse, I think verse 10 or 11, that says, be still and know that I am God. That's sort of one of the mantras of the mysticism, meditation, contemplative prayer movement in the evangelical church. Be still. But what they did was essentially what you did in the judge not thing. They took be still and then they crossed out all the context of what that verse is really talking about. And it's not talking about contemplative prayer or silence or meditation. But this is what they want to promote. And Ross says he'll give you a couple words for your mantra. And if you have trouble and you want to calm down, just chant your mantra until you go and you will go into an altered state of consciousness. And I was joking with Pam this morning, if I signed up for this, and I would not sign up for this, I think this is evil, I think this is of the devil, but my luck, Bob Roth would tell me that my mantra was Barack Obama. And somehow I just don't think that chanting that over and over is going to have a calming effect on me, but that's neither here nor there. A lot going on in the Middle East, this Qatar, Saudi breakup. We also have the crown prince has been changed to the son of the current king from someone else. He's considered to be a bit of a hothead. The person that was ousted as the crown prince is now being reported to be confined to his palace. This comes at a time when there's this breakup between Qatar and the Arab states in the Gulf, and they're restricting airspace. They're not letting things go in by land, and they've cut Qatar off, and it's really causing a bit. It's a big deal. It's not to be dismissed. And what's happened as a result of this is that Qatar is now moving into an alliance. I showed you the graphic last week of the Pars oil field in the Persian Gulf that they share with Iran. And so Qatar's now being moved closer to Iran. Well, now who else is coming into the mix but Turkey? And now Turkey's sending troops to Qatar. They're strengthening their alliance with Qatar. And as a result, Turkey is now developing a bit of an alliance with Iran. All of this fits into an Ezekiel 38 and 39 scenario. And what I want you to remember, there are prophetic passages that we don't really talk, and everybody talks about Ezekiel 38 and 39. But not as many, fewer people talk about Daniel 7, Daniel 8, Daniel 9. And what you see in Daniel 8, it talks about this is going to happen in the latter times, the goat that comes from the west, and to the east, and it's moving at a great speed. What you need to keep in mind is that there are passages in Scripture that indicate that things maybe aren't going to go the way you think. For example, in Daniel chapter 2, it talks about the iron and clay. They don't mix well together. And so what happens is you're going to see these alliances kind of burst onto the scene, maybe go away, and another one come up. And then so you need to be aware that the way prophecy will unfold didn't stop with the late great planet Earth in 1968 or 69. There are prophecies in scriptures that are yet to be fulfilled that need to be looked at, and we often talk about Daniel chapter 12, and that the wise will understand as we move into the end times. So now the thinking is Saudi may be on the verge of civil war. And I can see I'm already out of time, so let's see. Okay, just give me 3 things. I think I can do them in 7 minutes. Yeah, right. Big controversy over prayer at the Western Wall. Netanyahu pulled back on an agreement that had been made to allow an egalitarian place. There's a lot of conflict in the Jewish community. If you go to Israel, you can recognize that. And so now everybody, does the diaspora, the Jews in America, do they have any stake in Israel, or are they being ignored? And really what happens is that we know the Western Wall, which is, you see it here in sort of the left lower center of the photograph. And then you see that sort of tunnel that goes, that's how you get up to the top of the Temple Mount to walk around. So what they have done, there's a men's section to the left, a women's section to the right, but there's a lot of liberal, reformed, even conservative Jewish groups that want to have a place where men and women can go to the wall and pray together. What they've done for many years is, to the right of that tunnel that is where you ascend to the Temple Mount, is they've built a prayer platform there by what's called Robinson's Arch. It was an arch that was built around the time of the Second Temple, in the time of the Second Temple, discovered by a guy named Robinson in the late 1800s. And they built a platform there where they have egalitarian prayer. They want to, one solution would be to expand that and then to create like a walkway under the tunnel so you could get to it easily. It would then become more part of the whole plaza. So that's a big controversy in Israel. Now Caroline Glick she had an article about it. She has an article about the PLO's IDF lobbyists what's happening is there are former commanders and generals that have formed a group called Commanders for Israel's Security, and they're coming out and saying, oh, you know, we need to be nicer to the Palestinians. We need to let the Palestinians pay terrorists because that helps them get security information, and we can share security information in that. That's another big conflict in Israeli culture right now. I'll close with just a couple things here. Palestinians have now gone to UNESCO. They're meeting in Krakow, Poland right now. And what they want is they want Hebron to be declared a Muslim-only site. Now, this is Hebron. Now, Israel did something good. By the way, this picture was taken back in the Jewish synagogue part at the Cave of Machpelah. I'll talk about it in a minute. And this is a prayer service because an Israeli soldier had been stabbed there at the Cave of Machpelah and killed the day before. And when we went through the checkpoint there, you know, they said, where are you from? We're Americans. Do you have any knives? That's what the question was. Why would they ask that? Because one of their soldiers got killed, stabbed to death at that checkpoint. And so they're very sensitive to people bringing knives into that area. Israel, when UNESCO announced that they would do this, they wanted to send a team out to look at Hebron and to see what was going on and to see, you know, whether the Palestinian request should be granted. And Israel said, you can't come. Stay away. And I think this is great. This is one, and they actually came out with a report that should be adopted. The meeting starts today in Krakow, and it goes for the next 10 days because they have a lot of countries they want to interfere in. But they actually came out with this, and essentially what they said was, yeah, there's Muslim history here, but there's a lot of other cultures, like Christians and Jews, that have history here too. So that's actually what I consider good news, is that even UNESCO sometimes has to look at the facts on the ground. And this is, I can't remember, his name is Noam Amon, A-M-O-N, and he's the spokesperson for the Jewish community in Hebron. This is him doing a little Q&A and instruction session for parliamentary people from around the world. The Muslims didn't want them to come, but they took them there and they showed them these things. This Cave of Machpelah has been around forever. That you can stand and watch that sort of leaf-looking marble thing on the left. There's a lock on it. You go down there to the cave. And so you have the Cave of Machpelah that you see here. This is someone praying at it. Whoops. Turn the sound down. I thought I cut all the sound out. And you see the Cave of Machpelah. Now, this is taken from the Tell at Hebron, which was where the city was. That used to be a field. And 2,000 years ago, Herod came in and built this giant commemorative building as a pilgrimage site for Jews. Because why? Because everybody knows that Abraham was buried there. This is an aerial view of it. To the left is the south, to the right is the north. And this is the Jewish side, and these are memorials to, I think, Abraham and Isaac. And this man, I can't remember his name, is an archaeologist, and he actually got to go down into the cave about 30 years ago. They snuck down there at night, and they opened the cave, and they found bones in there. Maybe the bones of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and their wives, the patriarchs and matriarchs of Israel. And so there's this cave about 50 feet underneath the platform part of the mosque. You see the building there, the roof there for the mosque, and then to the right or upper part there, that's the synagogue part. It's divided, and I've talked a little bit about this. But this is conflict, modern conflict based on ancient sites. And so, you know, in Genesis 25, Abraham's buried there. And Genesis 24, he buys the field and the cave. Now, in Jewish tradition, and I'm not going to vouch for Jewish tradition, I'm just going to tell you what their Jewish tradition is, that cave, they say, was actually dug by Adam and Eve, and they are buried there as well. Now, there's some problems with that because of the flood that occurred between Adam and Abraham. But they consider, I'm just trying to convey to you how important the Jews think this site is to them. There was a Security Council meeting yesterday, Thursday and Friday, to mark 50 years of occupation. This is to build on resolutions. There were a bunch of speeches. I don't have time to go into them right now. Everybody was just having a fit. Now let me do one more thing. Let's talk about the Golan Heights. Because the UN had issued a bunch of resolutions also in December, and they're talking about these at these meetings about the occupation of the Golan and the damage being done by Israel to the Golan Heights. So I went and I found an aerial view of the Golan Heights. And this is what it looks like today. It does not appear to me that Israel is causing a lot of environmental damage in the Golan Heights. Now, there is environmental damage occurring when stray missiles from Syria get shot into Israel all the time, but they're calling on Israel to get out of the Golan Heights. And this is an important part of what's going on there. These resolutions that say, for example, also calls upon Israel, paragraph 2, to desist from changing the physical character, demographic composition, institutional structure, and legal status of the occupied Syrian Golan, and in particular, to desist from the establishment of settlements. And Netanyahu says, you guess what? We're not leaving. He issued a statement this week. But what's happening is there's this spillover from the war. You have ISIS right there. When we drove up through there, we're within a half mile of where ISIS is. We're within a similar distance of where the Syrian Free Army is. And there's, and then the Syrian army, Arab army is there. So this is a major area of conflict and war going on. It's bleeding over into Israel. And the question is, Assad's his Syrian Arab army is doing pretty well right now. And what happens up there if Assad gets control of the whole Golan border? Israel and the United States have helped the Syrian Free Army. And there's some elements there of Al-Qaeda and other things that have been helped, I think, by our country, because they don't want Assad to take it over, because if Assad takes it over, what happens? Russia's right there, Iran's right there, and Iran essentially will now have unrestricted access from Iran to the Mediterranean. It's not a good thing. Joel talks about the fact that this is going to be, Joel chapter 3, verses 1, about there are going to be people wanting to divide the land of Israel in the last days. And guess what's happening at the UN? People want to divide the land of Israel. There's a push to do it. The peace process itself is about that. Now, in the King James, it talks about in verse 4, yea, and what have you to do with me, O Tyre and Zidon, and all the coasts of Palestine? Will you render me a recompense? And I think that's a mistranslation there. This is the original King James, which is really hard to read because they've had to update the English because people don't read those letters anymore. But the word there is Pelasheth. It's translated the coast of Palestine, but I don't think that's a good translation. It really should mean the coast of Philistia. And when you put that in mind, so now you have, who are these people that are dividing, part of them who are dividing the land? Look at the map. Tyre. What's that today? Lebanon. Who's in control of southern Lebanon? Hezbollah. You go down here to Philistia, what's that correspond to today? Gaza. And so Joel really talks about these countries that are involved in this that want to divide Israel. And there's this really serious stuff going on the northern border of Israel. Give me 2 minutes. When we were in Israel, we drove up to the Golan, and I think I have the Sea of Galilee in that picture. There we go. The Sea of Galilee. We drove up the east side, and then we drove up a road up here to Quinitra, and then we drove up to Majel Shams, and then over to Dan. And then you see that yellow line across the top? That's the Lebanon border. So what we did when we were there was we drove up, and we drove, essentially, there were roads that sort of tracked that border, and we drove all the way over to Na'ariya to have dinner with some friends. And the mountains look like sort of California, and it's up and down, it's curvy road. But like right next to us was Lebanon, where Hezbollah is. And I raised that because now in this week, these started to appear on the border of Lebanon, in Lebanon territory. So in the city of, begins with an M, I can't remember the name of it. If you look, see where Dan is in the 99, if you go right to the left up in that little crook there, this is where that picture was taken. And so when we came down, we kind of went down 91 and across. So we were about 4 miles away from where that appeared. But and essentially you see the picture there. It's Ayatollah Khomeini. It's the Dome of the Rock. And it says it's Hezbollah flags and the Iranian flag flying on the border of Lebanon and Israel now. And it says, we're coming. And so the question is, so Israel's coming in to build a new fence, and there's a fear that might cause the war to start because Hezbollah wants to get in there and use their tunnels before they start building this new fence. So this is all very closely related to Ezekiel 38 and 39. And you see it sort of unfolding right in front of our eyes. Now, is this it? I don't know yet. We have to watch. It's one of the markers we're told to watch for in the end times. And it's clear that it's happening. It's the players. It's Russia, it's Iran, it's Syria. And what's going to happen? And Israel keeps making bombing runs into there, and this could go quick. This war could get bloody very, very quickly. I wish I had time I did a Bible study the other night and talked a little bit about this. It's very peaceful right now. You drive through there, it's beautiful pine trees and forests, but it can change very quickly. And that's the point, is things in this time are going to change very quickly. What we think might be an alliance that sets Bible prophecy in place, it might change very, very quickly. It might change in a week. It might change in a day. I mean, they just had a big thing with Trump and the Gulf Coast Arab countries, the Persian Gulf countries, Arab countries, in Saudi Arabia. And now they're at loggerheads between Qatar and these other countries. And that's just a month, that's 6 weeks ago that happened. So you just need to be prepared that things are going to change very quickly. It's all laid out in the scripture, and eventually we'll get to the point where everything's in place. We're not there yet, but everything seems to be building. Let's pray, because we're way over time. Father, thanks so much for the opportunity that we have here to share these things on a weekly basis. Pray for people that listen to us. I saw some prayer requests this morning. A lady that lives not too far away, her son is in extremely critical condition from a motorcycle accident. We just pray, Lord, that you would intervene and heal him. Be with the family at a very troubling time. And other prayer requests we get, Lord, you know what they are. Thanks so much for the people here that support this, and people come in early to set up and stay late to tear down. We just pray that you'll bless them and reward them for their service. Pray you'll bless us as we go this week. In Jesus' name, amen.